25 years since the HIV/AIDS pandemic began, more than 33 million people are living with the disease worldwide. Even with more knowledge about treatment and prevention, the death toll continues to rise. To learn more about the ongoing need for HIV education, prevention, and advocacy, we welcome Rodney Johnson and 16-year-old Micaiah Purvis, educators with the Trinity United Church of Christ HIV/AIDS Support Ministry. We also welcome Greg Braxton, an HIV/AIDS advocate and long-term survivor living with AIDS. Tell us a little bit, Micaiah, how you are involved at Trinity United Church of Christ.
Well, it's a lot of teens at the church, and as for me, I kind of reach out to the teens. I talk to them. I mean, we're all on the same level with our lives, so it's easy for us to communicate about problems. And because I'm so close with the HIV and AIDS ministry, I can give some advice or some personal problems, and we can go hand in hand with that.
And how did you develop a passion or an interest for this?
Well, actually, I kind of grew up in the church, so wherever my mom went, I went.
Okay.
And when she gets involved, I get involved. So usually at the youth summit that we have every year, we will have drug and alcohol, HIV and AIDS, and domestic violence. And I kind of got close with Rodney. And when one thing led to another, I kind of became a spokesperson for teens, and it all been going uphill since then.
Well, fabulous. I'm sure they're all grateful to have you. Say more about alcohol, drug abuse, and HIV. Is there a correlation, and why?
It impairs your ability, not only your ability, but your senses, and you make you don't make educated decisions when you start having sex, when you start dealing sexually. You know that you need to have a condom on, but the drugs and the alcohol are telling you, oh, I can't, I don't need, where is it? I don't have time to get it. So you just don't make the right decisions and put yourself in very awkward positions. Okay. To enable HIV/AIDS or any STD or STI to come in.
When I was in high school, it was considered manly to have sex, and I was extremely shy coming up, partly due to some physical and emotional abuse I suffered through 7th and 8th grade. Because I'm African American, but I look different. When I used to have hair, it was straight, and people used to kind of,
okay.
I had bad nicknames, and they would, I took a lot of flack, and it caused me to really go into a shell. I was in torture through 4 years of high school. I only had 2 friends. And so alcohol did for me what I couldn't do for myself. It brought me out of that, relief instantly. And so that's why I got into it so heavily, and I really almost didn't have any other choice because it relieved me.
Okay.
And it also got me sex. And over the years, I didn't get a lot of consequences for several years, but eventually I got into the crack cocaine, and that sex and crack kind of go hand in hand. It's just the two go together. And I did all kind of things, which led to my being infected with HIV.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Greg. It sounds like HIV infections are on the rise. If we do know more and we have ways to prevent, why do you think that is?
Well, one reason, because of ignorance and the stigma. Because when I talk to especially men, and and they feel comfortable enough to tell me that they're HIV positive, then they have to go on and tell me, well, I got it through drugs, or I got it through heterosexual contact or whatever, and like I tell them, I'm not here to judge how you got it. First of all, I'm sorry that you did get it, but now that you have it, where do we go from here? And so basically, that's it. See, unlike man, AIDS does not discriminate. And that's where we're fighting in a lot of the black churches now, dealing with homosexuality and the stigma of HIV and AIDS. And that's why our numbers are starting to rise up. And also our numbers are starting to rise up with our seniors.
Really?
Yes. God, Mother Nature, they have a plan for us all. So we have to know when to throw the hat in when our 6 days are over with. But, man has gotten a little smart and come out with that little blue pill.
Okay.
And now, they are having sex longer. So what is happening in the seniors community is that the first of the month when they get their checks, you know, you got your little crack girls coming around and, you know, to the sugar daddies and all that. And they're having unprotected sex with these young ladies. And they don't know their status, the young ladies don't. And they go back, and the men go back and have sex in their own community. And it's being passed around through there. If I could just relate one story to you right quick. An 83-year-old woman caught HIV from her her grandson, and she's diabetic, and she used needles, but he was using her needles to shoot up with and wasn't cleaning her needles out, and she became infected.
Oh, it gets so complicated.
It does.
Right.
It does.
Micaiah, do you feel like there's a stigma? Do people treat you any different knowing that this is a ministry of yours?
They don't really treat people different. They don't treat me different. It's just lack of education of the disease, especially in schools and different communities. When you propose the idea of sex education in schools, they teach abstinence, but they don't necessarily teach you a lot about the diseases and HIV and AIDS. And most communities, they oppose this idea because they don't want to accept the fact that their kids are sexually active or they're homosexual or the use of condoms. So I guess that goes hand in hand with the ignorance and, you know, sex education.
Okay, thank you. What would you say to somebody, any of you can respond to this, if they were newly diagnosed with HIV or AIDS?
One of the, just looking back on my first diagnoses, it was horrifying. And you're going to go through a grieving process. There's no way around it. You just can't tell them, don't worry about it, things will be fine. They don't want to hear that. You have to let them know that it's okay to grieve. It's a loss. And like anything else you lost, you go through that the process of 5 steps of bargaining, anger, and all that. And it could be all mixed up, and you could go in and out of those stages. But I would let them know that there is, number one, there is life after HIV. I'm a survivor. When I was diagnosed, I just assumed I was going to die. Matter of fact, I had young kids then, and I was preparing them for my death, talking about how I'd be flying around with the angels. And it was really heartbreaking because my daughter was little then, and she started crying and said, "I don't want you to die, Daddy." And that really broke my heart. But, you know.
How old is she now?
Yeah, it's funny how God looks at you and laughs at you because now I have 2 grandsons, and beautiful things. So, so number one is life after that if you manage it. And the second thing I would tell them that is extremely important is get support. We don't have to go through this alone, and people have been there before us. They know the resources, they know the emotional turmoil, they know how to deal with side effects of medications, and so on. So it's very important to get some kind of, hooked up with, especially with an agency, to get some kind of support with that.
What can all of us do to deal with some of this stigma issue, especially the church? It sounds like the church and homosexuality and sexuality in general is a complicated topic.
A lot of people in church had to come off with Pastor Moss called the CIV.
Okay.
Christian Ignorance Virus.
Okay.
And start learning how to be more compassionate towards people living with HIV and AIDS, and just be more compassionate about life itself, and just dealing with people and showing those that are living with love. And dealing with HIV and AIDS, it's about compassion. And us having our table set up every third Sunday in the church, you know, people starting to become more familiar with it and to come up. We have condoms out. That's one thing we do at Trinity and United Church of Christ. We pass out condoms. And also, speaking of United Church of Christ, I'm on the national level with HIV and AIDS with the United Church of Christ.
Wonderful.
But we do that. And so, you know, it's about really getting rid of that stigma. It's really about that stigma.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rodney, Micaiah, and Greg. I'm Polly Toner for Different Drummers. Keep the faith.